It's a fantastic Friday here on the San Francisco 49ers Report. Hope all of the faithful is getting ready to have an awesome weekend. And coming up on today's show, does Joey Bosa want to be a Niner? He said it. I didn't. Also, we have the latest Brandon Aiyuk contract update from NFL insider Albert Breer. All of that coming up right now. We begin with Joey Bosa here. Is he eyeing San Francisco? As we know, his brother Nick has turned into a defensive stud for the Niners, 2022 Defensive Player of the Year, and one of the best edge rushers in the game. And before Nick Bosa really reached stardom, it was Joey Bosa, who was a star with the Los Angeles Chargers. But that light has dimmed a little bit because of a lot of injuries over the last couple of years. Now, prior to free agency, the Chargers were reportedly listening to offers on Bosa. And due to a high cap hit, some thought if he were not to get traded and if teams did not call about a Joey Bosa trade because of that extraordinarily high salary with him not playing a lot of games, then maybe he would be released. And we talked about that here on the show, that if he were to get released, would it make sense for San Francisco to go after him? They were clearly interested in another edge rusher opposite of Nick Bosa. That's why they gave money to Leonard Floyd and Yetur Gross-Matos, but Joey Bosa ended up restructuring his deal, and he returned to the Chargers. But there has long been chatter that the Bosa brothers want to play together. Even their mom, Mama Bosa, has put out Instagram stories of both of them in a Niners uniform, saying she'd basically love to see Joey and Nick on the same team. But for Mama Bosa, she knows it's easier said than done. So the Chargers then, after not dealing away Joey Bosa, not cutting him, elected to restructure his contract. And that contract runs through the 2025 season. So 2 more years left on it. But that deal was structured in a way where he can be released after 2024, and it doesn't really penalize or crush the Chargers as far as the cap. So he could play one more year for the Chargers here in 2024, and if Los Angeles lets him go, it's not like they're going to have to eat an extraordinarily high cap number, and it would basically be like they're releasing him. He can hit free agency, and he can sign with any team. Now, we're talking about this because Bosa did an interview with ESPN this week, and what started the ESPN story pretty much in the first couple of paragraphs is the writer asking Joey Bosa if he'd like to play with Nick Bosa. And Joey said at some point, I'd like that. Here's a direct quote from the source himself. It'd be cool at some point. I always thought of myself being somebody that will play here and retire here, which I think not many people do on one team. And I think that would be a cool thing to accomplish. But you never know. I'm going to worry about this year first. So he said it'd be cool to play with Nick Bosa at some point. And given that they're brothers, given that they're blood, the possibility is never going to go away. You remember the rumors this past offseason. It got hot, especially when Mama Bosa is kind of wishing it, or at least hoping to wish it, into existence. What would it take? That is a fair question. And the trade never made sense because then San Francisco, which at the time was a little bit tight on money, would have to take on a huge cap hit for Joey Bosa. And as we know, prior to Justin Jefferson signing his extension, Nick Bosa was the highest paid non-quarterback in the history of football. So it would have to require Joey taking a discount because Nick Bosa, already under contract, he's younger, he's been more durable. Frankly, I think he's been the better player. And the concerns in acquiring Joey Bosa are the injuries. He's played 14 games the last 2 years. And in 2023, hamstring, toe, foot injury. So there were multiple of them. And he was relieved that he didn't have to get foot surgery because that was a really problematic ailment for him last year. He did have offseason surgery on his finger, though. And sneakily, Joey Bosa has been in the league for a while. And it doesn't really feel like that. I mean, he's 28 years old, but he gets drafted out of Ohio State all the way back in the 2016 NFL draft and got off to a good start. 10.5 sacks and 12.5 sacks in his first 2 years. And then the injuries started to kind of surface every other year. In 2018, he had 5.5 sacks, 7 games played. 2019, 11.5 sacks, 16 games. And then you start to look on your screen here of the last 4. 2020, he plays 12 games with 7.5 sacks. Following season, 16 games, 10.5 sacks. But the last 2 years, 14 combined games for Joey Bosa. And at the cap number in which he's been making, that's why a lot of people thought 14 sacks over the last 2 years. He's made a bunch of money on a huge contract that he signed. 5 years, $135 million, which gave him $27 million per year. That's why some people had speculated and theorized that maybe the Chargers were going to let him go. He restructured that deal. So does Khalil Mack. They're both back. And if they're both healthy, they could form to be one of the top edge rusher tandems in the NFL. But after 2024, could Joey and Nick, the Bosa brothers, be on the same squad? Bosa brothers would be a great t-shirt, by the way. Thank me later. Would you like to see Nick and Joey team up? Y for yes and for no. Share what you're thinking about this down in the comment section right now and have some fun with it. Coming up next, what is the latest price tag for Brandon Aiyuk? We're going to dive into that. But make sure you give me a follow on X and Instagram, in addition to all of the long-form shows that I put on the Niners Report right here on YouTube. I put out a lot of informational tweets and short-form videos on my social media pages. 300 people away from 30,000 followers on Instagram and 300 people away from 13,000 followers on X. Give me a follow. Let's chop it up and interact. As for the latest Brandon Aiyuk contract update, NFL insider Albert Breer thinks the final number for Aiyuk will come in at $29 million per year. Here's what Albert Breer had to say in his Sports Illustrated piece. I think the San Francisco 49ers will make a very real effort to sign receiver Brandon Aiyuk before the start of training camp. Mike Silver of the San Francisco Chronicle has the Niners offer at a new money average of $26 million per year. My sense is that getting in the neighborhood of where they'll have to lock up Brandon Aiyuk, whom they really do value and love, I think the final number, if I had to guess, will wind up being $29 million per year, which would put Aiyuk past Jaylen Waddle of the Miami Dolphins and past Detroit Lions wide receiver Amon-Ra St. Brown, and still behind Minnesota Vikings wide receiver Justin Jefferson by quite a bit, which would be understandable. The interesting thing from there would be how the Niners react when calls start coming in on Deebo Samuel. So an interesting little wrinkle there at the end from Albert Breer mentioning Deebo Samuel's name. And of course, interesting that Breer has the price tag at about $29 million, because as we talked about earlier this week, according to Mike Silver, the Niners starting offer $26 million average annual value for Aiyuk. I think that's smart by San Francisco, because if you're an employee, you always want to go into a contract negotiation with a high number that you come down from. You always want to shoot for something more, and then you'll be content coming down to that number. If you're an employer, ideally you want to start lower, knowing that you're going to give yourself that wiggle room to come up a little bit. So by starting at 26, the Niners have some wiggle room and flexibility here and a few $1 million to work with, and they could maybe increase that offer to 27, 28 million. Could it even go up to $29 million? Are the 49ers willing to budge off of that number? Aiyuk could very well want $30 million per year. And in hindsight, I think the Niners have played their cards wrong this entire offseason. Historically, they have always waited to give their homegrown players contract extensions. This offseason was not the time to do that because the wide receiver market has been reset historically multiple times this offseason alone. Calvin Ridley gets $23 million per year. Devontae Smith gets $25 million per year. A.J. Brown gets $32 million per year. Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jaylen Waddle, right in that $28 million per year range. Justin Jefferson, most recently, about 10 days ago, up to $35 million. So at the start of free agency, I think San Francisco could have realistically had Aiyuk at around $25 million per season, because they could have said, you're our number one wide receiver, and we're going to pay you like that because that's more than Deebo Samuel. But because the Niners have waited, the market has gone up. And now Aiyuk very well can go to the negotiating table and say, Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jaylen Waddle might have more targets than me, but I'm a better player. Jaylen Waddle is a number 2, making $28 million per year. I'm the 49ers' number 1 wide receiver. And if you want to tell me I'm not Justin Jefferson at 35, that's fine. Am I worth $30 million per year? So the 49ers have kind of messed this up and approached this in a wrong way, in my opinion. They've given out these extensions to George Kittle, Fred Warner, Deebo Samuel, Nick Bosa in 4 consecutive offseasons. All of those deals have been signed in late July, August, or in Bosa's case, September, because it was $34 million per year with historic guaranteed money. That's how the Niners have done business. But in doing business and waiting to do it until late in the process, the price tag for Aiyuk has gone up. So $28 to $29 million seems like the sweet spot to get the job done. It's higher than what the Niners' initial offer is. It might be a little bit lower than what Aiyuk is asking for. And of course, as always, guaranteed money will be very important. If the bottom line is this, though, that the Niners value and love Aiyuk, they drafted him 25th overall. They've groomed him. They've developed him into an all-pro player. He epitomizes what the Niners are about: toughness, physicality, getting in the lab, working on your game, great route runner, good vertical threat, has a great on-field relationship with Brock Purdy, a willing blocker, plays the game the right way, then sign him to a contract extension. My rule, whether it be in corporate America or in professional sports, you do not let special walk out of the door. And Brandon Aiyuk is a special player. And if he costs $28 to $29 million, fork that cash over and admit your wrongdoing, because in waiting, you're having to spend a little bit more money. Get the deal done. What will the number be per year on Aiyuk's new deal? Your best guesses down below in the comment section right now. Have a great weekend. Great content to come right here on the Niners Report. And as always, thanks for watching and thanks for your support.